welcome and thank you for inviting me here. I think it's been very interesting discussions we've had so far, and I hope I can highlight another perspective that I think we haven't really talked about yet, and that is the ecological sustainability of the technology we are producing. I've been in the field for about 10 years. I'm a more humanities researcher. I've been working in the humanities for the past 10 years. I wrote a PhD on algorithms, but more on algorithms, how do people understand it? How do they make sense of it? So my perspective is always the user perspective and the audience perspective. So I'm not a creator myself, even though I find it interesting, but I've always looked at the other side. We have talked a lot about who are these people that actually participate? Can they make sense of it? Is it for too complex? And interestingly, I think a lot of these discussions that we've had today, we actually had them 10 years ago when I wrote my PhD. We talked about decentralization, we talked about new technology, making our world extremely different. And yeah, now it's 10 years later. And we have to see what we're doing. And that's why I find this community extremely exciting, and I'm extremely happy to be part of this and hope I can contribute with some thoughts from my own research, but also what I've been thinking about lately in my work. Yes, I come from Denmark. I'm originally German, but I am at the Roskilde University in Denmark, which is very close to Copenhagen. So whenever you're in Copenhagen, just let me know. But right now I live in Chiang Mai, where I'm a guest researcher at Chiang Mai University. So I'm really trying to understand also the relationship between like what it's called like the East and the West. So I'm a little bit new to the East part, but I've been in the West literature for quite some time. And I want to start my talk with this. I'm not sure it now will be interesting if some of you remember, but when I got really interested in technology with email, we had this campaign which was called Think Before You Print. So when email was introduced, then we had this idea, oh my God, we need to save the environment. Now we have email, now we have the digital paradigm, and now it's really important that we also not print, that we don't do it twice, that we send it digitally and then at the same time we print it out. So I remember myself running around and telling my parents, you should not print anymore because it's important that we save the environment, it's important we do something really, really good. And when you read literature, the digital comes with a sort of sustainability paradigm that we're thinking, okay, we're doing something good for the environment. So they come with some sort of narratives of hope. And I think I've had that through the conference. I have heard it several times that we're creating this technology in terms of a better future. So we have an imagination of the future and we're trying to do something for the futures. So a lot of narratives are narratives of hope, and in academia, especially in feminist theory, there is this concept that's been developed, hope technologies, because a lot of people put their hope on these technologies. But there's also a little bit a different side, a backside to it, because if we put hope into the future, where does it leave us now? Like, what are we actually doing now then? So these technologies become kind of the launch pad for the future. So we're solving a problem we're having right now for the future, but where does it leave us now? So the promise is typically the same. I mean, as I said, it's a little bit the same discussions. We're trying to reduce energy. We're trying to reduce energy consumption and global emissions. We're trying to solve healthcare problems. We're trying to solve mobility problems. And there's nothing wrong with that. That's the typical narrative about the technologies. But then we have everyday life. As I said, like I'm a humanities scholar, so I really work with users. And at the end of the day, we're all tired. We go home and we just want to relax and we start streaming Netflix. And there's, again, nothing wrong with that, but I think what that actually means in terms of using energy or what it means, the consequences, I think they're very hidden. We're not really aware of them. So what happens that newer studies have actually shown that Netflix consumption produces 20% of the emissions of all digital devices. And it has gotten that far that the SHIFT project states that the ICT industry produced twice as much emissions as the aviation industry. So this leaves us with the question, Is it now better as a consumer to stay home and binge watch a Netflix story, or should I actually go and take an airplane and go to Paris for the weekend? What is now worse for the environment? So if I think about myself as a sustainable person, I'm kind of in this dilemma that I cannot see through the consequences. And while we've talked about the aviation industry a long time, we never talk about the emissions of the digital technology. And I think that is a blind spot, and we need to start talking about this. We need especially to start talking about it because we live in this generative AI era. We have talked a lot about AI, and we have talked about that maybe at some point AI is going to produce their own tools. And studies have shown that the sole production of the GPT-3 model has used the energy equivalent of 123 gasoline-powered passenger vehicles driven for 1 year. And this is only the production of the model. We have not even used it yet. And then even a study that just came out yesterday, and it needs to be peer-reviewed, and I know there's a lot of different calculations on what it's actually been used, but it shows that when we just create one image with generative AI, that we use as much energy as charging a phone. So imagine you're producing maybe 10, 12 images until you find the right one that you like. That means you have charged your phone 10 to 12 times. And again, I'm not saying that these numbers are true numbers, but I'm just saying there's an energy consumption that we need to be aware of and that we need to think about. So I think we can agree on that we will have a rise of energy consumption. And again, this is numbers from the CHIF project. It just shows that the more we produce, especially the more AI we produce, we actually really need more energy. And that's why I think we as a community, we need to start think about it, and we need to start think about how can we introduce this to our design cycles, how can we think about these in our production cycles, especially when we talk about we want to create technology for the greater good, because the greater good has also something to do with the energy we're using. So this is called a paradox. Our technology essentially is a part of a paradox, because the better our technology gets, maybe the more social, maybe the more inclusive, we have more people using them. And the more people are using them, the more energy we're using. So this creates some consequences that we can simply not see through at the moment. But again, I think there is a solution, and the solution is that we need to look in our design cycles. So he's been, this is in economics, it's William Stanley. He's been the first one who has linked this use towards technology. And that's also the relationship I've been working with over the past 10 years. So that's why it's important to look at the relationship between the human, the user, the producer, then these types of infrastructures or emerging technologies, and then the natural world. So we need to look at this relationship, and we need to find out how can we redesign or redefine these types of relationships. So to give you some background, this is Don Ede. He's a philosopher from the US, and he's talked about technology life worlds. So he talks about different types of relations. And the first relation he's actually termed embodied relations, where it's an I and technology, and I'm looking at the world. And he says that prior to the technology we're actually producing right now, he takes the example of the glasses. So if I define my glasses as a type of technology, it's me with the glasses, and we look at the world. We perceive the world, we experience the world. That's basically the most basic relationship we can have. And then the next one, he talks about the hermeneutic relations, where he said, okay, it's me, and then the technology becomes a representation of the world. And whenever we measure something, for example, when we measure how hot or cold it is, then technology represents the natural world. I can see, oh, it's 25 degrees on my device, and then technology somehow represents whatever's happening. But with the technology we're producing right now, he argues it's some sort of iterative relations. So I create a relationship with the technology, but the world, the natural world, somehow goes in the background. I have no relation to the natural world any longer. And then let me go back to the Netflix example. When you binge watch something, I'm not sure if you ever thought about your energy consumption at that point, and if you think about, oh, maybe I should stop this because I'm using a lot of energy. So we are actually creating technologies right now where the natural world goes so far in the background and it becomes sort of immaterial that we have no relationship towards anymore. And that's why he calls these technology quasi-others. And if we take it a step further, there's another philosopher, Gunkel, and he calls our technologies we're working with communicative others, because he says we're creating communicative relationships with technology, but again, they're disconnected from the natural world. So we're not using technologies any longer, as I said, my glasses to perceive the world, or as when I want to measure the temperature that symbolizes the world, but we're creating relationship with that technology. And we have heard a lot about this, we're creating it in our minds. So the question is, where's the environment? Where's ecology? Where's all that? And I think we have become extremely disconnected from it. So, and that's why I kind of want to reintroduce the environment. So if we think about these communicative relations that we've talked about, where we've disconnected, how can we reintroduce environment? And I hope that is something, a discussion or a dialogue we can have. And my suggestion is that we need to make them part of meaning-creating processes, because communication in the end is about creating meaning, it's sense-making, it's about finding out how we understand our world. So it's important that we, in these meaning-making processes, not only talk about social equality or inequality or some sort of civil society, but it's important that we also talk about the environment and the climate. So the environment and the climate becomes material again, and becomes material in relation to these technologies. So when we talk about sustainability by design, and we have talked a lot about sustainability, and I'm here taking a definition by the United Nations that, sustainability means meeting the needs of the present without compromising the ability of future generations to meet their own needs. So if we think about sustainability, it's so important that we not only think about social equality and civil society, but that we also think about the environment and the climate. And what does that mean? I think that is something we need to define together. And as I said, I hope this is a discussion we can continue. Right now, I think when we talk about climate, we talk a lot about energy consumption, as I've shown you the slides in the beginning. We talk about e-waste, like what are the production cycles of the iPhones, of the computers we're using, those things. We talk about the resources we're using. We talk a little bit about use, because there's also use and use. I can use it a lot, or maybe I can use it in sort of sustainability ways, in ways that are sustainable. But of course, we are all a part of this, because we are creators of the technology, but we are also users of this type of technology. So what I want to leave you with my talk is with these two questions. The one question I want to give you, and maybe hopefully think about, is that how can we create and negotiate ecological meaning with emerging technologies or the digital infrastructures we're producing in the context of everyday life? I really want us to think about the everyday life we're living, the resources we're using, everyday life. How can we create meaning in relation to the environment? When we've talked so much about decentralization, about having people involved, people being part of a community, how can we at the same point also think about the resources we're using, the climate, the energy? And to give you a different example, I think what's happening right now in the academic literature after ChatGPT or OpenAI have released that chatbot, now there's a lot of work on creating algorithms that use less energy. And I think it would be nice to not make the same mistake and actually think about it now, rather than creating a lot of technology that's decentralized, that thinks about the social things, but that doesn't think about the environment. I think it would be really great to implement that in the production cycle right now, or in the development cycle. Yeah, and that's the question, how can eco-sustainability become a default in digital commons? So as I said, it's not something that comes afterwards, but it's something that we think about now, right now. Thank you very much.